Jamie Raskin and James Comer really could have their own sitcom.
Our colleagues have no problem using those agencies to get the things done they want to do. If you read their Project 2025, they want the President of the United States to be able to use the Department of Justice for the first time in American history to go after his political opponents. And to well, if you disagree with that, then I'm delighted to hear it, Mr. Chairman.
Which Department of Justice going after political opponents? The Merrick Garland Department of Justice or the
Well, let's
next
see.
Department?
There's a case right now against the Democratic senator from New Jersey, Mr. Menendez. There's a case right now against a Democratic congressman from Texas.
I see a pattern with Democrats.
And well, wait a second. Now, don't be too clever. You're a smart man, but try to follow a principled argument. You just claimed that the Department of Justice was somehow biased against Republicans, and I'm naming you cases where the DOJ is going after Democrats. Your problem is the jury system in New York, which found unanimously that Donald Trump was guilty of 34 criminal felonies. That's got nothing to do with the Department of Justice.
Well, when the Department of Justice sends the number 3 guy down there to prosecute the case on behalf of the...
Which case are you referring to?
The Trump case that you just referred to.
You're talking about the District Attorney Bragg's case in New York?
The number 3 guy went down to New York.
All right. Well, we'll have to take that up at another point. But I'm talking to you about what former President Trump says he wants to do. And if you think it's outrageous, then I am delighted to hear it that he would use the Department of Justice.
No, I just thought it was outrageous. You saying the Department of Justice under Trump was going to be weaponized when we believe that this Department of Justice has been pretty darn weaponized.
Well, what is the proof of that? I just named you 3 cases where the Department of Justice is going after Democrats. And I mean, that's a very serious slur against the Department of Justice and the Attorney General.
I stand by that.
You stand by your slur then. Well, I would love us to have a complete hearing then on whether or not it's true, because I think it's wrong. And in fact, really, it's just setting the stage for Donald Trump to try to use the Department of Justice as an instrument of persecution against his political opponents, real or imagined. We came close to becoming a failed state, which the political scientists define as a state that cannot deliver the basic goods of existence to its people. According to Dr. Deborah Birx, Donald Trump's own COVID-19 advisor, America unnecessarily lost hundreds of thousands of people because of the recklessness and indifference of Donald Trump and his administration. Now the people who brought you the political big lie, claiming absurdly that Trump won the 2020 election, which he lost by more than 7 million votes, now bring you the medical big lie, making the outlandish claim that Dr. Fauci was responsible for causing COVID-19.
Jamie Raskin is absolutely cooking Trump and his sycophants in Congress for failing the American people during the onset of the pandemic. And he's far from done yet.
House Republicans now find themselves in the familiar position where their own investigation debunks their runaway political rhetoric. The investigation of Dr. Fauci shows he is an honorable public servant who has devoted his entire career to the public health and the public interest, and he is not a comic book supervillain. The people bowing down to a twice impeached, convicted felon who told Americans to inject themselves with bleach now want you to believe not only a big political lie, but a big medical lie too.
We need to see so many more Democrats fearlessly taking on the lies the Republican Party has gotten away with for so long to show that there actually are some fighters left in the party who work for their voters instead of their donors, like too many other Democrats in Congress. Now, it's funny that Raskin mentioned the sham Biden impeachment proceedings because the head of the investigation, Representative James Comer, is going to try to pull a fast one on Dr. Fauci later on in the same hearing.
Dr. Murrins wrote to Dr. Daszak, quote, "Peter, from Tony's numerous recent comments to me, they are trying to protect you," end quote. Did you ever talk to Dr. Murrins about Dr. Daszak or EcoHealth Alliance?
I can tell you, regarding what you said, I never spoke about protecting him. I mean, obviously, we knew that Daszak was a grantee, so I may have mentioned and discussed Dr. Daszak because he's a grantee, but I never spoke about protecting him.
You're testifying that he just made that up.
Excuse me?
You're testifying that Dr. Murrins just made that up.
I don't know where he got that, but that's not true.
When these emails were written, you should have known that Dr. Daszak was more than 2 years late on a required progress report with his grant. Dr. Daszak conducted an experiment that resulted in a novel virus showing excess growth. That Dr. Daszak failed to report that experiment, that Dr. Daszak was protecting the Wuhan lab and not sharing its lab notebooks, and that Dr. Daszak failed to disclose obvious conflicts of interest. So why were you trying to protect Dr. Daszak and EcoHealth Alliance?
Comer is trying to build the narrative that Dr. Fauci intentionally and nefariously protected a grantee doctor who Comer and the Republicans are accusing of releasing the coronavirus from their lab in Wuhan. Now, we're not defending Dr. Daszak's numerous breaches of department policy and alleged shady dealings, but this is what the conspiratorial mindset leads to, y'all. Thankfully, Fauci would quickly debunk the accusations that he was the mastermind behind leaking the coronavirus to the world.
I repeat on the record, I have not tried to protect Dr. Daszak. And that's number one. Number two, you said something that's not true, because I did not know about the compliance issues until well after the fact, when I was being briefed for going to before a congressional committee. So it wasn't as these things were going on, I knew that he was withholding.
Did you know about Dr. Moran's close relationship with Dr. Daszak?
Dr. Moran's made it clear that Dr. Daszak was his friend. I did not engage in any of that interaction between them.
You testified and answered the chairman's question that you never had any communication with the intelligence community throughout all of COVID. Did I understand that correctly?
No, you heard wrong. I said I did have communication. I was briefed by the intelligence community multiple times during the COVID issue.
And you never...
The gentleman's time has expired.
No, I think I made it clear. I mean, they were talking about my knowing about a lack of compliance. That became clear, Congressman Raskin, well after the fact. It isn't as if they were not complying and I was not monitoring their non-compliance. I didn't know about it until it was a done deal.
Gotcha.
Republicans are engaging in this political stunt for multiple reasons, but the main few are to sow distrust in government institutions so they can gut them in the future, to prey on the ignorance of the voters, because it's a lot easier to get misinformation, disinformation out if a ton of people don't know about or won't bother to understand the science. And also to shift responsibility for the pandemic response away from Donald Trump. Yeah, you ain't getting off the hook.
Unlike the first Cold War, the adversary is already within, having entrenched itself within U.S. borders, institutions, businesses, universities, and culture centers. By capturing the elites and influential circles. Simply put, too many federal agencies have failed to understand, acknowledge, and combat CCP's political warfare. Sometimes this is because the agencies themselves have succumbed to CCP influence operations seeking to reshape U.S. decision-making to the party's benefit.
You know, James Comer loves to come after people he disagrees with, in spite of it never working out for him. But now he's not only looking at the Chinese Communist Party, he's looking at Tim Walz.
It's troubling that you could potentially have a vice president of the United States who has such a fond place in his heart for the communist country that he should be actually very concerned about.
As you all know, China steals our intellectual property. They steal our patents. They fund disinformation campaigns. They try to divide our democratic government. They do everything they can to harm everyday Americans.
Comer is very concerned about Tim Walz's ties to China. When he graduated college, he went there to teach, and he's gone back several times. Now, this concerns Comer, who apparently thinks all there is to do in China is share USA political secrets. However, he didn't seem to mind, remember, when another politician cozied up to China.
He loves them because he envies their total control over their societies, and they love him because they know they can manipulate and control him. He praises all of them, Putin, Orban, Xi, Kim Jong-un. Trump exults in their friendship and emulates their control over what he calls their people. When he was president, Trump said that he and Xi, the president of China and chairman of the Communist Party, quote, love each other. And Trump called Xi a brilliant man. He openly envied and marveled over Xi's total control over his people, saying, quote, he controls 1.4 billion people with an iron fist. And when people ask questions about Xi and the CCP's role at the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis, Trump repeatedly defended Xi and praised his excellent leadership, calling him a brilliant man, smart, brilliant, everything perfect. We love each other. President Xi, who's a friend of mine, who's very smart, very good man, nobody like that, the look, the brain, the whole thing. My feeling toward you is an incredibly warm one.
You know, this feels like it's going outside of having good relationships with foreign nations and turning into something much more nefarious. I mean, isn't this something we should be more concerned about than Wools's trips to China?